So I've been using the iPhone 13 Pro for the last month now, and just for some background, I've used pretty much Android since my first phone. I did use an iPhone SE 2020 back like 2 years ago, and I wasn't a huge fan of it, so I don't have a ton of experience with iPhones. So this is gonna be pretty much an Android user's perspective review. So if you're an Android user just like me, thinking of making a switch to iPhone, or if you're just trying to see if the iPhone 13 Pro is worth the money right now, let's go ahead and talk about it. As far as hardware and design, you are going to get a premium looking and a premium feeling phone here. The back is a frosted glass finish, so it is soft and doesn't attract too many fingerprints, but the sides are glossy and it's like stainless steel. So one, it makes fingerprints very attractive, and also it makes the edges just a tad bit sharp. So in the hand, after some time, I do feel a little bit uncomfortable when I'm using it. So I end up usually using a slim case just to make the edges just a little bit softer. And the phone's got some heft to it. So if you're not a big fan of heavy phones, even though it's a small phone, it still feels pretty heavy in the hand. As far as the button and ports, you do have lightning at the bottom, which is very annoying because I'm so used to having USB-C on all my devices, whether it be my phones or other products that I have. The buttons though, I do like that they're pretty big. Both the power button and the volume rocker have big buttons, and the volume rocker itself is split up into up and down. So I kind of like that because it's very easy to know which button you're pressing when you have it in your pocket. And you also have a mute switcher, which basically allows you to mute your ringer and your notifications in a quick, easy fly motion by just hitting that switch, and boom, your phone is muted. So I definitely like that as well. And you do have dual firing systems as far as speakers here, and honestly, these speakers are so good. I always, like I said in my previous video, I always see in reviews how people praise the iPhone speakers, and they always say the speakers on other phones are pretty good until you compare it to an iPhone. I will admit it's pretty true because the speakers on here are very nice. They're well-rounded. They got some deep bass. I don't know how else to describe music and sound besides saying it just sounds really good. And the whole phone itself does have an IP68 water and dust resistant rating, so it'll be just fine if you splash it with water as well. As far as the display, you are going to get a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED 120Hz ProMotion display. So what does that basically mean? You're going to get a high-end flagship display here. So everything from watching content, scrolling around, whatever you're doing, you're going to get a good display here. Now, of course, you do have that ugly notch and pretty thick bezels in my opinion. The bezels are even throughout the whole display, but they're still pretty big compared to other bezels from other phones. So I guess it's up to you to decide if it's going to bother you or not. Personally, I get used to it, but I will still complain about it because I can complain about it. So I'll complain about the notch, I'll complain about the bezels because they're not that attractive. But you know, it is what it is. It's still, actually no, it is not what it is. You know, Apple, please improve that. I know in the next generation model they are supposedly supposed to improve that, but I'm still currently using the iPhone 13 Pro, so I'm going to complain about it on this phone. So basically the display, like I said, will be super great and super smooth. And as far as brightness, you are going to get a pretty bright display here. When you take it outside, it's going to be more than viewable outdoors. And there are some displays that are definitely going to be brighter, but it definitely gets by with this sort of display. And you have the option of turning on True Tone, which basically changes the way the display looks a little bit based on like the blue light filter, I think, to make it look better depending on the lighting environment that you're in. As far as biometrics, you only get Face ID on here, which is a bummer because I'm so used to having facial recognition on some devices and also a fingerprint sensor. So Face ID itself is super secure and reliable, and it's definitely hard to trick. And I also like that it's really good at detecting your face even in dark environments, so you can be pretty pitch black in your room or wherever you're at and it can still recognize you, which is pretty awesome. But there's like certain situations where I still wish I had that fingerprint sensor because I'll wake up and my eye, half my eye is still closed or something like that, and the Face ID won't recognize me, and because it wants my full attention, so I end up having to, you know, force myself to open my whole eye or have to put in my PIN numbers. So either way, Face ID is nice and secure for sure, but I definitely wish that it had that option of a fingerprint sensor. As far as everyday performance, you are going to get the A15 Biometrics with 6 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage. So basically that means that you're going to get a very high-end performing phone here. I've honestly had no issues with performance on this phone, so my usage is very basic. So I pretty much do what probably the average people or person does. So texting, calling, which by the way services have been just fine on this device. I check my emails, check the internet, check social media apps, take some photos here and there, Snapchat every once in a while. You know, it's very basic usage. I don't do anything crazy on here. I use my phone like I feel like most people would use their phone. So like I said, performance has been just fine. The OS with the hardware has been perfectly great. So because, you know, it's all built together, built to be on one product by one company, you know, it all works just fine. The only time I was able able to get the phone to warm up just a bit, or actually kind of warm up, was when I was using it outside. And that's because it's getting pretty hot outside now, so temperatures are rising up now. And even then, the phone, even though it was warm, performance was not slowed down. All my stuff that I'm doing usually was still able to be accomplished with this device. And the only other time I was able to warm it up just a bit too was when you're taking photos and videos, and also when playing a game. So the only game I ever really play is Rocket League, and that game runs perfectly fine. So even though the phone will warm up just a tad bit, so performance is still great. So overall, you really won't be having any kind of issue as far as performance on the iPhone 13 Pro. Now, as far as iOS, coming from Android, I am used to a lot of UI customization and different features. And with iOS 15.5, I believe, you don't get a ton of UI features, but the different features you do get are actually pretty useful. Like right now, the lock screen with iOS 15, everyone pretty much has the same lock screen except for changing the wallpaper. Now, with iOS 16, there is going to be a new feature that allows you to change up the lock screen itself. So that's going to be pretty cool. But besides that, going into the home screen, you're very limited here. So I'm so used to being able to change the grid size, being able to put icons and widgets pretty much anywhere on the home screen, even be able to change the icons, being able to change the transition animations. So you can do that by, I think, like downloading some other apps, but just basically in the stock launcher, you're very limited here. So what I had to do was put widgets at the very top and be able to make my icons show up at the bottom so I can easily access them with one hand. Now it is a small phone, so I am able to reach, pretty much most of the screen with my big hands. But either way, I wanted the ability to be able to put the icons lower on the screen, or even widgets lower on the screen if I wanted to. And speaking about widgets, you do have the ability to stack them. So that actually makes it pretty nice to keep your home screen pretty clean. And to make it easier to actually reach the control center and the notification center, I actually have an accessibility feature turned on where you can double tap to pull down a certain feature or to perform a certain action, and triple tap to do the same to perform another action. So I have it double tap to bring down the control panel and triple tap to bring down the notification center. So again, it makes it very easy to pull that stuff down and get to it without having to reach high up with my big hands. If you have small hands, or if you have the iPhone 13 Pro Max, it might be more difficult to do that, to reach all the way to the very top. But either way, the notification center is pretty clean for the most part. I have no issue with it. I do notice that it's trying to stack up most notifications from a certain app in one stack so that it's not a bunch of apps all over the place or notifications all over the place. But I do notice that there's some times where it still has multiple stacks from the same app. So I feel like that could still be cleaned up a little bit. And I do like the notification summary. So basically, instead of getting spammed constantly throughout your whole day with notifications from all your apps, you can set up notification summary to have you send one summary of all your notifications or all the apps that you have selected for the summary, and then send it at a certain time that you want. That way you're not getting spammed all day. As far as the control center, I like it. It's pretty clean, pretty easy to get access to all your quick tools and some of the quick settings if I actually have to go into the settings app itself. I'm kind of in between on the app library, so I like that all my apps are stored in one spot, but I don't like the fact that iOS creates the folders for you, so I can't create my own, because sometimes I get confused as to why one app is in a certain folder and not in another folder. That's just my personal opinion, but either way, I do like that the app library does exist. And I gotta mention it, the lack of multitasking. So I don't consider multitasking being able to switch between two apps very quickly. I consider multitasking being two apps at the same time. So whatever multitasking it is, whether it be in general life, it's doing two things at the same time. So for me, being able to split the screen is not available here, which is something I do on all my Android phones that I like and prefer. And at the minimum, I wish I could do picture-in-picture with a regular YouTube account. So I don't know if you need a premium account. And I know you can do picture-in-picture with other apps and even I think on Safari, but on regular YouTube without a premium account, I can't do it. And I find it very annoying because that's something that I do at the minimum on all my phones. And the main thing iOS has got going for it is definitely going to be that whole ecosystem, whether it be your own Apple products or with other iOS users. So with my own Apple products, I only have one, so I can't really comment on that, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that it's pretty seamless and pretty easy to connect between all of them. So I will comment on the fact that I have all Android based products. So for example, my Samsung watch here, I can't connect to it on here. So basically this watch is just being used for a step counter. I do receive notifications, but it's notifications from my S22 Ultra, so I don't receive calls and texts. So that's kind of frustrating that I can't actually use my Android or Samsung watch to connect with my iPhone. And my tablets, they do have an ability to connect with each other. So like with my phones, I can receive text messages on my tablet itself. Again, I can't do that with the iPhone here. So it sucks because Android products have their own ecosystem and Apple products also have their own ecosystem. But talking about the ecosystem with iOS users, I will admit, if you're a person who cares more about connecting with others, sharing with others, it definitely makes more sense going with an Apple product, especially in the US, because God, there's Apple products or Apple users everywhere. So most people in my generation or in my class, like school and stuff like that, people I'm associating with, friends, family, whatever it is, everyone seems to have Apple phones or iPhones. So either way, it is very nice. Everything that Apple has for that ecosystem is very convenient. You got FaceTime, Android has Duo, there's AirDrop, Android has Quick Share, there's the Find My network, Samsung has their own network now, and I think Google has their own network as well. So there's definitely different ecosystems, and it sucks because they don't work together. So you can't use your phones to its full potential if there's two users with two different phones. Not to mention software support is going to be really good on the iPhone, so Apple typically supports their products for a long time, so you'll definitely be getting OS updates for quite a while on this phone right here. As far as the cameras on here, I will always and forever say I'm not a heavy camera user right now, so basically I don't really do anything extra with my cameras. I just point and shoot and hope that I get a good photo or a good video, which is why it is pretty important for me to have a pretty good camera system here. As far as the front, honestly, it looks good to me. I have like no complaints here. I think my skin looks pretty natural in most situations. There were some photos where I felt like it overexposed the background and also made myself look a little pale, but for the most part, 9 out of 10 times, I looked pretty good. For video, you can record 4K. I recorded my videos in 4K 30. As far as the back, you do have an ultra wide, a wide, and a telephoto, and I am using the standard photographic style. So there's a couple options you can pick from there, but from the one I'm using, the standard one, photos look really good, and they actually stay pretty consistent whether it be using the ultra wide, the wide, or the telephoto. So whichever one you pick, all three other lenses take pretty good shots and pretty good photos. The only things that I notice is that when you're using the ultra wide, one, it's a pretty wide shot, but also you can get pretty close to a subject and get a good macro-like shot, which is pretty nice. And overall, all photos seem to look pretty natural, which depending on how you like it, again, you can change that in photographic styles. So either way, I think photos look pretty good on here. And for zooming in, you are capped out at 15x, which isn't that great compared to the competition, which is like going to anywhere from 20 to 30 to even 100x depending on the phone. So I wish that was improved, just because I wish the 15x and 20x would potentially be pretty good quality. So I definitely hope that's improved in the future iterations of iPhones. And then going into video, you do get 4K 60, but I usually just record in 4K 30. And there's those other features that you get like Pro Video or Pro Res Video, whatever that's called. So for me, I don't use those, so I just point and shoot with regular 4K 30. So whether you're using the ultra wide to wide or telephoto, similar to photos, all looks consistent and all looks pretty good as well. Now again, similar to zooming in with the telephoto for photos, you are capped out at just 9x for video, which isn't that great again compared to the competition, but again, video for me is gonna look pretty good. I also want to mention that on social media apps, the camera looks really good. So for photos, it looks pretty good. For videos, which is where Android usually lacks a bit when it comes to video for social media, it looks really good on the iPhone. So overall, for the most part, the camera quality you're gonna get in here is really good. You're not gonna get any extra or super exciting videos unless you're like a pro that uses those extra pro features, I guess. But for me, who's just a basic user, I do wish there was a better way to zoom in further. But besides that, I have no issue. The camera quality is good on this. As far as battery life, you are going to get a 3095 milliamp hour battery, and of course it will depend on your usage. And for me, like, my usage is very light and very simple, and it may depend on whether I'm working or not that day. I end up getting about a day to a day and a half worth of batteries. So my screen on time ends up being like 2 to sometimes 5 max of screen on time, again depending on whether I'm working or not. So for me, for a small battery and a small phone, iOS optimization is crazy, so battery life has been good for me. And as far as charging, you do get about, I think, like 20 or so watts of fast charging, at least quote unquote fast charging, because it's pretty fast at first from like 0 to maybe 50 or 60% battery life. It takes about maybe a half hour. But besides that, it ends up taking about like a whole hour to an hour and a half of charging to fully charge the device. So it does take some time, but I guess hopefully in the future they can improve that. But either way, battery life on a small device like this has been really good for me. So should you go out and buy the iPhone 13 Pro right now? Honestly, no, only because the iPhone 14 series is like almost right around the corner. So if you can wait, I would wait till then. But if you need a new phone right now, it's gonna depend. If you're an Android user just like me and thinking about making the switch, then think about first what kind of features, what stuff about your current Android phone do you like the most, and think about whether or not you can live without those features, because chances are you probably won't have those features on iOS. And if you're a user who doesn't care about the whole Android versus iOS debate, then honestly, this is a good phone. I will say it's got a good camera, good battery life, good build, good quality screen. So for the most part, it checks the important stuff on a good phone. So if that's what matters to you the most, then yeah, it's going to be a good phone. But definitely, I don't think it's still worth $1,000. That's just me, but still a good phone. So for me, what am I going to do? I'm still going to stick with the iPhone 13 Pro for right now. I do miss these guys right here. I am going to make a comparison between Samsung and Apple, I guess, or just S22 Ultra versus iPhone 13 Pro. I don't know which video I want to make versus, just I want to make some kind of video comparing Samsung and Apple. But for right now, I'm going to use this as like my, I guess, regular basic phone. So for talking to people, texting, iMessage and stuff like that. But for pretty much everything else, I think I might go with one of these guys. So otherwise, that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.